everyone. Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan, along with Kathryn Peterson, and today we're bringing another guest into the podcast. We really look forward to introducing you to our good friend Kym Mason, telling you all about some of the interesting journeys she's been on and some of the interesting journeys she is aiming for in the future. But before I dive into her story, I'd love to welcome my favorite co-host, Kathryn Peterson.
Hi, Michael. Thanks so much. It's always great when we have a guest. It's my favorite, and we get to learn a lot about someone who we think everyone else should get to know as well. And Kym and I have recently really connected. I guess we've kind of talked over the years, but I feel like more deeply lately. And that's what's going to be fun is there's a lot to Kym's story, and I'm excited to dive in and get some good insights from her that I've already gotten myself. So I'm excited to share those with the world. So thanks so much, Kym, for being here.
Thanks, Kathryn. I'm so excited to be here. I love both of you, and it's just such an honor to spend some time with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So first, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I started as a loan officer in '99, so right as rates were headed up, and then had a baby my first year in, and then rates started coming back down, and hit the ground running from there. And, of course, there's been a lot of ups and downs since then. But after about 5 years of being a loan officer, I opened my own branch, and I had Mason Mortgage. It was a net branch, so as if I was the owner. And I did a lot of brokering then, and then sold that in 2010, went into retail and was in retail as a branch manager until 23. About a year ago, I went back to the broker world and took a national success strategist position with Summit Lending, and still producing. So production really is my lifeblood. I love helping other loan officers succeed on their journey, but I feel like I need to be in it to be alongside them on the journey. And I love producing. It's fun. Yeah. So
thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think you're right that it's so important for a manager to know what people are going through every day, and having the feet on the street is really, really important. I can see you being an amazing manager for sure, because you relate to people so well. So then with that, because it sounds like you've had a really long business career. So what do you feel like are the pivotal points in your career that kind of got you to this point that you're at now?
I would say hiring a coach. About a year in, I hired a coach. And so I've had a coach for almost my entire career. And the first thing my coach said at that time was to hire an assistant. So I hired a coach and an assistant when I'd only been in the business about a year and a half. And then, and I've had both ever since. So that was huge for me. And then starting Mason Mortgage, about 5 years in, that was a huge pivot point for me. I always wanted to create something from nothing. Like, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and home loans just happens to be the vehicle, right? That I get to have fun and execute on this entrepreneurial spirit of mine. So I wanted to create something from nothing. I wanted to build a culture. I wanted to build my own systems and processes, and I didn't want to follow what everyone else was doing. So that was a lot of fun for me and a big pivot point. And then when I reached that goal at in 2010, so I'd set a 10-year goal that I was going to sell. So I wanted to build something that would be of value to the marketplace that someone would want to buy. And in the mortgage world, you don't traditional like sell your business in the same way you would in another type of business. But essentially that's what occurred. And that was really fun for me. I loved the company that I partnered with at that time. And then I got to learn what it was like to be in middle management. And that was another goal that I had. I'd never been that before. And I wanted to know what that would be like to have to answer to someone and provide tangible results in real time, and be accountable for those, and have to report, to someone else, because that put some additional pressure on me. It forced me to grow. And so then I got to do that and grow my value there as a team player in a leadership role. So in addition to the team members I was responsible for coaching up, I also had leaders that I was learning from and being coached by. So I really enjoy that. That was a pivot point for me also. Of course, the 08, 09, time was a pivot point. And I learned at that time what I was really made of and how committed I was to this business? Am I all in? Is this my lifelong career path or not? And it is, and I made that decision at that time and went all in. And then, a year ago, making the pivot to become a broker again, moving to Summit Lending, taking on that success strategist role where I get to once again build something from nothing. So, building this internal platform of helping our loan officers and team members succeed, that's really fun for me.
So,
I
Kym, a
would
lot
say,
of our listeners are going to describe themselves as entrepreneurs. That's a common
yeah.
theme with the audience that we draw. And you mentioned your entrepreneurial spirit early on. Where did that come from in your story? Was that just hardwired into how you, thought and were made, or did someone intersect you along the way and introduce you to the idea of the value of entrepreneurship? Where do you think that came from?
Great question. So I'd say a couple things. One, when I was little, my dad would tell me every night as I went to bed, "You are a leader, you're not a follower. You're a leader, you're not a follower." And he spoke that into me. And he also constantly told me to have an open mind, have an open mind. And his famous saying is, "Be aware of your surroundings." He always wanted me to look outside of myself to see what was possible, um, and to be a leader and not a follower. And so that, I think part of that was like the nature nurture, like that was the nurture piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then my nature is I'm very driven for freedom and fun. Very. Like I have four things. Michael knows my four things that I really want in life is serenity, wisdom, freedom, and fun. Now, serenity, there's not a lot of serenity in being an entrepreneur. So I've had to work hard to create that. Wisdom I've found over the years, especially from coaching, but the freedom and fun is something I've just been driven for my whole life. And I needed to feel like I had the freedom to create my own reality, like my own way. And I feel like this industry that I'm in gives me that opportunity.
One of the things you had in our pre-session notes was, I learned I function best when I can be an entrepreneur and have the freedom to fail or succeed on my own. And I
Yes.
loved that. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to fail at times. Like I need the freedom to try something and have it crash and burn because I'm not afraid of failing. I hate failing like everyone else does. I hate it with a passion. But I know that I can recover. Like I know that whatever happens to me, I can recover and I can come back better. And Michael, where did that come from? I'm not sure. I think that's maybe from your previous question. I think that's maybe something I was born with. But I need to have the freedom to try things out and have it fail and then find a better way.
Yeah, I know that's you mentioned the nature versus nurture. I know that's maybe one of the most long running debates in psychology. And I would tell you that I'm less interested in solving that as I am exploring the story that people have. And your story shows me what most stories tell me, which is it's a little bit of a blend of both. And as you blend them, it's hard to tell if which came first. And so in your case, Kym, what I hear is those four values, those convictions that come from deep inside of you that become the values that you live by, and therefore the values that anyone that's going to associate with either the Mason group or anyone that you're going to partner with outside of the group, they have to understand those things about you. You mentioned four of them, of course. I want to zero in on one, Kathryn, is, Kym, you talked about serenity, and you are right. It is a difficult thing to create serenity in a world in which it's anything but serene, at least in recent years. I feel like that's a decision that you have to make in your head and your heart, despite your environment. How explain to our audience, just in simple terms, how have you pushed yourself to create serenity in a world that's not naturally that way?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told you this, but there's a moment in time when I made the decision to pursue serenity above all else, and it was in 2012. And 2011 was a really tough year, mostly in my personal life. And what I found was my desire for freedom and fun, my drive for freedom and fun just kept blowing up my life. And I just wanted to live the adventure at all times and leave nothing on the table, live every day like it's your last. And that can cause some problems. So what I found was I need to pursue serenity first, and then live the adventure, not at the expense of my serenity, right? That seeking serenity became part of living the adventure for me. So now oftentimes my adventure includes that, those moments of serenity, or seeking those moments, creating space for that. And then now that's part of the adventure. So I made a very intentional decision to change my whole life. And I started getting up at about 4:15, 4:30 at that time, and spending 2 hours minimum reading, journaling, praying, like just in quiet time to get really clear. I had books on personal growth and professional growth. I had a stack next to me. I had my spot on the couch with my blanket and my coffee. I had 2 kids at home. I was a single mom. And my youngest and I would go for a walk every morning because he has ADHD, and so do I. But that's how we helped him manage it, with some exercise in the morning. So we'd go for a half-hour walk together. So up until then, I had this 2 hours to myself. And I'd never done that before. I kind of went to bed when my kids went to bed, and I got up when they got up. I really like to sleep. So I was like, I had to get up earlier and create that space for myself to write. I love to write. And so I created that space to write, to think, to pray, and very intentional about what I was reading at that time. And I read a lot of books that year, and I did a lot of writing, and I just got real clear on what serenity meant for me. And I made a decision for that year to have an awareness of what I was doing, the choices I was making, and to be consistent with that morning routine. And at the end of that year, I felt like I had serenity that no one could ever take away, and that I would never give away again.
Wow, that's awesome. And I love that you spent that time intentionally every single day to find
And I
that.
still do. Mhm.
And good. That's great. That's a great habit
Yeah.
to continue to build. So then for you, because you've been through a lot, I know there was something in 2018 that we should probably talk
Yeah.
about, because that's pretty inspiring, I think, to a lot of people. So fill some people in about kind of that year,
Mhm.
both the downside and the upside of that.
Yeah. And there's always both. That, is this good or is this bad? Well, we shall see. And that was true for this. So in 2018, I was in a bicycle accident. I went over the handlebars of my bicycle just by myself, going down a hill, and I hit my head, bounced, the brain bounced, and so I have a brain injury in my left temporal lobe, and then something a little bit on the right too. And it didn't seem like a big deal at that time. Really, I was more worried about my shoulders and elbows being messed up. But then as time went on, the brain injury got worse and worse and worse instead of getting better. And so so I had concussion symptoms that were extreme, like concussion to the extreme, and they didn't go away. So for that whole year, I spent about a third of that year in a dark, quiet room alone. I couldn't read I couldn't read any books at all for that whole year. And I could barely read my email or my phone. When I would read, it would set off all of the concussion symptoms. It was hard to talk and be in a room with other people. That would set it off as well. A real blessing about it is that I became extremely aware of people's energy, really, like in a wild kind of way. Like I could really feel the vibration, like I could feel what kind of energy they had, and it made me extremely intentional about the people that I surrounded myself with and my close relationships. And that was a huge blessing to me. I had some business partners that I found I needed to reintroduce to the marketplace with love.
That's
Detach
a
with
good way
love.
to say it.
And then invite some new ones in. So in leading up to that accident, so here's the amazing blessing of this. In my search for serenity, right? Seeking serenity and having that time in the morning, I read a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And he talked about how you could program your brain, like what we don't realize that we are doing that. We program our brain every day. So everything that we do from the minute we get up, we do a lot of things on autopilot that we have no idea that we're doing. It's programmed in there and we can't even access that part of our brain. And so there was a person in his book that had a brain injury and that happened, and they got to see, the whole world could see like what he did on autopilot because he wasn't even aware of what he was doing. And I asked myself, what would I do on autopilot? What if I woke up tomorrow with no short-term memory? What would I do on autopilot? And would it be things that were healthy for me, or would it be really detrimental to my well-being? And so I decided to intentionally program my brain, also because the fewer decisions I have to make every day, and the less I have to rely on willpower, then the more creative problem solving my brain is freed up for. So I felt like it just would benefit me in a lot of ways. So I set my day from when I woke up at that early time in the morning, like same time, did the same thing in the same place every day for a year. And then I just kept that going. And so that would have been like 2013, 2014 when I implemented that, not knowing that I was actually going to be in an accident and have a brain injury in 2018 that wiped out most of my short-term memory for that year. I couldn't remember anything, and I could not think. I couldn't problem solve. I couldn't make decisions. I didn't have any willpower. But I had this life on autopilot. So those habits that I created, that I programmed, was what got me through that whole year of 2018, and then continuing on, because the brain injury took several years to improve, and it's improving, not all the way better, but improving all the time. And also leading up to that 2018, I had built a team. And as I said, I've always had an assistant, but I had very intentionally built a team and built in systems and processes for my team. And when I was suddenly, with no notice whatsoever, I'm out. And I have a branch and I have a personal production team. And with no notice, I'm out. And they just handled it. So everything just kept going. My client experience was the same. My partner experiences were the same. My team just kept everything going and really carried me and carried our business through that year. And in 2018, we finished #1 in market share and volume in our county as an originator, under my origination. And that is a testament to my team. Like, that is incredible teamwork. And then to pre-programming your brain ahead of time for those healthy habits.
Okay, so there's so much in that story. I could camp on that story for a whole session, because there's so many nuggets in there. I want to hit a couple of them and just ask you to dig a little deeper. One is, you had this intentional preparation for an event you could have known nothing about ahead of time, and yet it proved to be exactly what you needed. Now, look, I don't want to over spiritualize this. All I want to say is, something in you said, I can't always know what's coming, but I know that I need to be prepared that things will come. Is that a fair statement, Kym? Because something
Yes.
in you knew that. Did that come from some outside wisdom, like you were reading a lot prior to that, you were spending a lot of time being influenced, or was, again, that just something innate in your spirit that said, I believe in preparation regardless of the circumstances? Where did that prep come from?
I'm a very curious person, super curious. And so I want to learn all the time. And when I learn something new, I want to implement it. So I read a lot, and I'd read a lot on the brain. And I had done a lot of reading on the brain. I had read My Stroke of Insight about the woman who had a stroke and then wrote about it. And that happened before I had the brain injury. And so I also, I believe in God. I'm a person of faith, and I feel like God put those books in my path at that time. And I do believe that God knows what I need when I need it. And sometimes I don't know. I don't know why that subject, was presented to me. And I was so curious about it. And then I really dug in. But I believe that God knew that was going to happen, that was going to be on my path, and he provided exactly what I needed when I needed it. So I just I'm open to it. Like, I'm curious. And when things really strike me when I read something and I go, that hits a chord with me. I'm deeply curious about that. I just trust that there's a reason for that
That's so
curiosity.
That's so good, Kym. And again, Kathryn, I this is a topic maybe we've talked about in other contexts, but as we're raising our kids, which is part of the dynamic that all three of us share, we're professionals who also are parents, and I think a lot of our audience can relate to that. There comes a time in our kids' lives where this happens, Kym. We shift our prayers from their safety to things like their courage or their strength or their wisdom, because just like you said, we don't exactly know what's coming, but God does. And we want them to
Yes.
be prepared for how to handle it, because life isn't going to be safe. Life isn't going to be easy. And so for you to not only know that in your heart ahead of time, but then actually do something about it. Again, the coach in me says to any of you listening or watching out there on our YouTube channel, don't miss that point. Maybe today life seems like it's in a pretty steady place. Maybe you feel like Kym might have felt in 2015 or 16 or 17, like, hey, these are just my habits. These are just my routines. But you don't ever know what those habits and routines are doing to prepare you for an event that you might not see coming, or an event that's coming to someone you care about. Maybe it's not you. Maybe you will be the one having to serve a person that you love or that you care about. So, Kym, I appreciate you sharing that story. One more thing, Kathryn, I want to jump on is this concept of willpower. I remember my friend Todd Bookspan and I read a book back in 2000, I don't know, 17 or 18 by Benjamin Hardy called Willpower Doesn't Work. And I loved that title because it forced me to think, okay, well, if I can't use willpower, you have to be curious and dig in. What does it take? And Kym, you talked about a similar reality in your experience. What is it about willpower that you had to submit so that you could succeed?
Boy, that's a big question. Willpower does not work at all. And so what I had to surrender was the idea that that I was strong enough and tough enough to power through anything, like of my own will. Like my willpower, I can do it. I'm strong, I'm tough. I was definitely raised that way. And I had to surrender that and say, maybe, maybe not. Like, um, maybe I can't do every single thing by myself under my own power at every moment. And to not see that as a character flaw. I had a lot of insecurity about myself and not being good enough. There was a lot of soundtracks in my mind that were, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. Because I saw that as a character flaw, that my willpower was not enough to for me to succeed by. And so letting go of that and surrendering that and saying, no, I actually I do need help. It's okay to ask for help, to get help, to have an assistant, to get coaching, to seek to seek God, to ask for help. That then I could kind of let go of the willpower and surrender that and say, I'm gonna. One of my affirmations is I surrender my life to God's will, and then I ask Him for the power to carry out whatever His will is for my life. So I kind of surrendered my willpower to God's power and say, I just want to operate under your power. You tell me, you show me, and I want to come alongside you and serve others in a way that is pleasing to God. Um, and so really letting go of the focus being on myself and that I'm big enough, I'm strong enough, I'm good enough, because I don't have all that by myself. Like willpower does not work for me at all. I have to build in routines and habits, and I have to read um, what I said, input, affirmations, and associations. Those are the three things for me that changed my life. And so I got more intentional about my intake, who I surrounded myself with, and then my self-talk. And that kind of replaced my idea of having to have enough willpower. Like those things give me buffer.
So Kym, you have so many brilliant things to say. And what I want to hear, because you are now helping other people grow in this business. So what would you tell a new originator to set them on the right path, considering how much experience you have? I'm curious to hear that.
So, okay, one, get a coach. Two, ask for help. I believe in having an assistant. I know that's not for everyone. But I have found I would rather make less money and have more time, but I'm very driven for freedom. So, don't compare yourself to everyone else. You need to know your own scoreboard, and your scoreboard is not the same as everyone else's scoreboard. It is 100% possible to have a successful business and have a successful family life. You can have both, because I am living proof of it. If you will let go of all those statistics out there that say, oh, if you close 100 million a year, or if you close this many units, or if you will just let go of all of that and stop trying to measure up to other people's measurements of success, you can have a great life in this business. But get really clear on what it is that you want and the price that you're willing to pay, because there is no shortcut and there is a price to be paid. And if you're willing to pay the price, then you can have any life you want in this business. And I am living proof of that, starting from nothing and now being a real estate investor, helping each of my kids buy a home. I have my dream home in Key West, Florida, which was a 20-year goal that I wrote. And in 2018 was the first time that we really started to look. And then in 2021, my husband and I were able to buy a condo there, which is, like I said, was my 20-year goal. So, and then I have a beach house in Washington. And you guys, those are my places of serenity. Those were my dreams that I had when I started in this business 25 years ago with nothing. And I am just normal. I'm just like you. I'm not, there's not something extra special about me. I'm not this, splashy performer. I've got all the answers. So if I can do it, then you can do it. Get clear on what you want, get clear on your scoreboard, on what your daily activities are that are going to get you to where you want to go. And that's just execute consistently and ask for help.
Kym, it's so fun listening to you, because in many ways, what I hear, if I just went back and listened to that last 3 minutes, I feel like I am listening to what I try to tell every client I work with. Be really clear on who you are. Be really clear on what you want and what you're willing to sacrifice, because everything has a cost. Be crystal clear on why that's important to you, so that you're fighting for your version of that outcome versus somebody else's expectation on you. Whereas Kathryn's heard me say, don't let other people should all over you. You follow your own dream. And once you've done those things, have a vision, create a plan, be really committed to follow that plan, and have somebody that's in your life walking with you that can help hold you accountable to why you are or are not doing what you said you would do, because life has distractions. That's reality. No one walks this life alone. All those themes just came out in your answer, and I feel like you are the living proof that it doesn't take magical moments, nor does it take superhuman feats. It takes real people being honest with themselves and honest with each other, and then a commitment to do those things. That's the formula, folks. If anyone has said, does coaching work? I would argue no, unless you believe what you just heard Kym say. And if you do, and you're willing to follow through on it, then you can design a great life. And that's, Kathryn, that's what Building Bigger Lives was really built on, was this idea that bigger lives are possible, but you have to build them. And that takes time, that takes a plan. And Kym, it's just great to hear you talk about that. Kathryn, I won't ramble any further. I don't think I can recap better than we just heard.
And somehow we're almost to the end of our time. I don't know how it flies by if we have an amazing guest like Kym. So Kym, is there any little last bits that you want to make sure you don't forget about? I know we had a lot of stuff to talk about today, so I want to make sure we're covering everything that you want.
I would say life is guaranteed to have tragedy. So that's guaranteed, but triumph is a choice. And you have the power to triumph. It's in you. So, I was really fortunate that I felt like I had poured into some things ahead of time, not knowing that I would need them later, that helped me to triumph over the tragedy of the brain injury. I've had lots and lots of other tragedies in my life, as well as just like everyone else has. But the triumph is a choice, and you have the power in you to triumph. Whatever tragedy is that you're experiencing right now, you're not alone. And life can be hard, but there is triumph. And I guess I would leave everyone with that, with the hope that your life can be anything that you choose it to be. Ask for help and do the work, and there's triumph to be had.
Kathryn, you know I can be distracted by musical references. What Kym can't know is that Triumph is also the name of one of my favorite Canadian bands of all time. And one of their classic songs is Fight the Good Fight. And Kym, I'm just going to assume that that message was for me, is let's focus on triumph and let's keep fighting the good fight like you've been doing over the last 30 years of your professional life. It's an amazing journey, and it's not over yet. You've mapped out some things that I look forward to seeing come to fruition, because you have a vision that continues. It's not like you've said, hey, I've got these, places of serenity. I'm just ready to sit in my little world of Zen and check out. No, you've created serenity so that you can continue to impact other people and develop your vision further. I'm excited to continue that journey with you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kym. All right, with that, I'm going to close us out. We've been talking to Kym Mason, the amazing Kym Mason, I should say. And thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for joining us. You can always find us on Instagram and YouTube at Building Bigger Lives. Please continue to share and listen and forward on to your friends and contribute however you can. We'd love to hear from you on what you think. Thanks so much for joining us today, and have a great day.